Sweet. All right, let's do it. So since I'm inside, as Sarah points out, for the first time in a while, I'm going to use the wall for my roll down. So if you have a wall, maybe use it. And if you don't worry about it. But yeah, you can just come to the wall. And again, like you can do it as wall city as you like. A little bit of bend or a full 90, totally up to you. But take the second to kind of have the back of your head on the wall, slight chin tuck. So this, doing it against the wall always kind of brings you back to your alignment, which is nice. So you can become really aware. So doing that slight chin tuck to feel the point of your head reach up the wall so your neck is lengthening, slight tail tuck, and then rolling down. So tucking your chin and rolling one vertebrae at a time. All the way to the bottom. You can give your head a little shake, grabbing on behind your knees to give a little pull up, and then releasing your arms and roll back up. So tucking your tail to press each vertebrae in. Just let your arms dangle. So we'll do 2 of these roll downs. So at the top, doing the chin tuck to lengthen the back of your neck, and then roll it down from there. Giving yourself that little pull at the bottom. Release and roll. Back up. Yeah. It's nice to go back to the wall every once in a while to feel what all those little adjustments that you've been making kind of feel like now. All right. So we're going to do a little kind of yoga flow warm up. So we did this flow on Wednesday, thinking about the upper body, but now we're going to do it really focusing on the lower body. So you can come to the top of your mat. Go this way so I don't face plant the wall. Taking a second to really ground down through your feet. So close your eyes and find your balance. So pressing the inside edges of your feet, the balls of your feet, stretching out tall, and then folding forward, lengthening through the tops of your hamstring. Nice and easy and relaxed in the front of your hips to hang down. Hands to your shins. Really squeeze your shoulder blades together to lift your upper body and reach back and out through your sit bones and fold. With your right leg, step it back into lunge and then turn your back foot out like warrior 2 so that the front heel intersects the middle of your back foot and windmill on up. So, to set your position, Lorena's here. Really tuck your tail and then sink into your front knee a little bit more. So you're going to try to keep that connection to your low core, tucking the tail and pulling your front knee out towards your pinky toe to try to keep that whole area engaged through the whole thing. Stretching out through your fingers, sink down. Keeping that tail tucked, flip your front hand, reach up and over. And reaching long through your fingers, lunge a little bit deeper into your front leg. Coming through the center, hinging forward, so you're reaching forward with your top arm, elbow down, over the top. Trying to pull your ribs in, tucking your hips under, and reach long through your fingers. And back through the center. Now you can move with your breath. So still tucking your tail, pulling your knee to the outside, reach up and over. See if you can reach a little longer through your hands to get more stretch through that side, and then lunge a little bit deeper with your front knee. So your butt should be getting a little tired. Back through the center, hinge forward, elbow down, up and over, and reach long through your fingers and out through the back edge of your, outside edge of your back foot. So trying to get nice and long. Sweet, we'll do that one more time. Flipping your hand, reaching over, setting that position, so tuck your tail, pull your knee to the outside, and then you can bend your top arm and support your head. So hopefully with all those adjustments, you can really feel that connection from your shoulder to your hip. This gives you a bit more awareness how it all goes together. And last one to the front, hinge forward, elbow down, reach over the top, reaching long through the edge of your back foot, your hand, and then you can bend your elbow just like on the back to cradle your head and pull your head a little further away from your body. Again, you can really hopefully feel how all of that attaches to your back hip. Coming back through the center, we'll windmill down. Step back, down dog. You can pedal at your feet a little bit. Hopefully that front leg's a little bit tired. And we'll vinyasa to switch. So tucking your tail, curling your ribs in, come forward to plank. You can always come down on your knees, lower down to your belly. Shift forward, squeeze your shoulder blades together to open up your chest, lift up. And flip your toes. Down dog. I'm just going to turn around so I can still see you. It's up to you. And this time we're going to reach forward with your right foot, or whichever one you didn't yet do. Turning your back foot out so that it's in line, heel, front heel, the middle of back foot, and then cartwheel or windmill up. So take a moment to set your position. So you're really tucking your tail under, so everything's nice and flat, ribs are pulled in, and then sinking into your front knee. Trying to have it tend towards your little toe. So if it's turning in, make any little adjustments, try to pull your knee out. So this is a position you're going to keep the whole time. Arms out. Flip your palm, reaching back. Reaching long through your fingers so you can start to feel it kind of at your hip bone and then lunging a little deeper into your front leg. Coming through the center. Hinge forward, elbow down, and reach long through that top hand and out through the outer edge of your bottom or your back foot. Over the top. If you've lost it, tuck your tail, lunge a little deeper, pulling your front knee wide, up and over. Maybe letting yourself turn a little bit more towards the ceiling. Reach your hand long. Back to the center. Hinge forward, elbow down. One thing that may help you rotate a bit is bringing that front palm towards your waist. Then that you're already starting to twist. You can reach long through your fingers and reach up through your chest. And we'll do it one more time. Flipping your palm, lunging deeply into that front leg, pulling your knee to the outside, and then you can bend your arm and grab your head. So you're cradling your head, and you can just lay it back in there. And one, last one to the front, hinge forward, elbow down. Reach long, really spiraling your chest up towards the ceiling. And then if you like, you can bend your arm to hold your head and pull your head away from your butt. Awesome. Coming back to the center, windmill down. And step that front foot back into your down dog. Pedal out your feet. And then shifting forward, so coming up on your toes, tuck your tail, pull your ribs in, forward to plank. Lower down, chaturanga. Shift forward, squeeze your shoulder blades together to open your chest up, looking up. And then sitting back on your heels. And just give your hips a little like shimmy side to side, because you sort of open them up a bunch in that. I'm finally warm. Awesome. Okay, let's do our little down dog plank type flow. We'll just throw a bunch of things in there. So even though it's kind of lower body specific, the whole time in your down dog and in your plank, trying to spiral your elbow creases forward and push the ground away. It's going to give you that good push training for your handstands, but it's also going to kind of minimize any twisting through your midsection, so you can focus even more on your hips and your legs. So setting yourself up. Spreading your fingers wide, elbow creases forward, step it back, plank, and then shifting hips up and back to down dog. So you're gonna bring your feet together. So you're nice and balanced. Lift one leg. If you know you have a worse leg, start with your worst leg. Lift it up towards the ceiling, push the ground away. Then you're gonna bend your knee, making sure your hips are square, so you know what your kind of baseline is, and then big circles with that knee. So really pushing the ground away. We're gonna do 5 in each direction. Pushing the ground away and pulling your ribs in. So it's really only your hips doing the work. You're not getting any extra help from your upper body. After 5, switching direction. Trying to make the circles as big as possible while keeping your hips and ribs steady. After 5, reach it up towards the ceiling, step it down, pedal out your feet, and then curl forward, plank. Now from your plank, pull your ribs in, tuck your tail, and the same leg that you just did, we're going to do 5 little lifts straight up. So your toes are pointing straight down and you're just lifting your heel so it's in line with your hips to start warming up your hamstring. And after 5, if you want, you can put your foot on the ground. If you want a little extra challenge, keep your foot raised, lower down, chaturanga. Squeeze your shoulder blades together, up cobra, and then wave back down onto your stomach so that you're lying totally on your stomach with your face on the ground. So the same leg that you just did, so all 3 things are on the same side. You're going to keep both hip bones heavy into the ground, push your pelvic bone down to the ground, and lift that leg straight up and down. So it's not going super high. We're going to do 10. Now that you have the movement, try to quiet everything in your hips and your back. So you're really trying to feel your glute and your hamstring doing the lifting. Everything else can kind of relax. So after you've done a couple, now you can linger. So lift, hover there, and then see if you can relax the part, your low back and your hips. So yeah, you're really trying to target that glute and let your midsection have a bit of a break. So again, this is a really good one to do if your SI is a little bit cranky because it reminds all the big muscles that they can help, and all those little muscles and your low back, it doesn't need to be the overachiever that it sometimes wants to be. So if this is your 10th one like me, you're going to lift and hold for a count of 10. So really straightening your leg, relaxing your low back, relaxing your midsection, and trying to feel it in your hamstring and your glute. 3, 2, 1. Lay it down. Sit back for a moment. Sit on your heels to stretch it out. That kind of back and butt side, or butt and back side. All right, and now we'll do the whole thing on the other side. So starting in your plank, rippling up and back down dog. Take a moment to really set your upper body. So spiraling your elbow creases forward, pushing the ground away. Feet together. And then with your other leg lifted up, hips nice and square, bend your knee, heel to butt, and big circles around. Still pushing the ground away and keeping your hips as kind of square as possible so your sacrum isn't moving around too much. After 5, switching direction, still pushing the ground away, but pulling your leg in towards your midsection as close as you can. After 5, pause for a moment, reach your heel towards the ceiling, and then step it down, shift forward into plank, spiraling your elbow creases forward, push the ground away, so you're really pulling your ribs in, and then with that same leg that you just circled, we're lifting up and down. So it's only going as high as your hip, you're not going past it in any extension, trying to keep your hips really quiet, so you're not twisting, they're nice and square, hip bones towards the ground. If you want the challenge, you can do the lower with your foot raised, or you can put it down, up to you, wherever you are. Come down, chaturanga. Squeeze your shoulder blades together to lift up. So stretching out everything. Really squeezing shoulder blades together to roll down. Back onto your stomach. You can lay your head down on the ground. We'll do the same 10 lifts on the other side. So take the first couple to just kind of get your bearings lifted up. And then start to get heavy through your pelvis bone, through your hip bones. And trying to stay relaxed and quiet through your low back. It's probably easier on one side than the other. And I definitely find that this leg, so my left leg is usually my good split, which means my left leg doesn't need to do much in the back. So it's harder on this side for me because this is my good leg split. So if you notice any of that kind of imbalance, just notice it, but don't be too upset. Stay heavy through your hips, reaching up through your heel. And this is my 10th one, so I'm going to hold for a count of 10. Really trying to relax through my hips, relax through my low back, and then use that glute to lift my heel a little higher. 2, 1. And then you can sit back on your heels to stretch it all out. Awesome. All right. So now we'll do a little bit of kind of opening to the side. So if your wrists get tired, or you just don't want to be in a full side plank on one arm, you can always do this down on your elbow. And if you start on your hand and you're like, abort mission, that's totally cool. Just like drop it down to your elbow as best you can. Okay, so we're gonna come from our plank. Push into one hand, roll over into side plank. So making sure that your shoulder is stacked over your wrist, you can extend your other arm up. With your top leg, you're gonna turn it out so the top of your foot's pointing towards the ceiling, and we're just gonna bend in and out. So I'm just sliding my foot along my leg, and just like that beginning lunge, I'm really trying to point my knee to the ceiling, tuck my hips under. We're going to do a total of 8. So I have 3 more. 2, 1. Hold for a moment, pulling your knee towards the ceiling, tuck your tail, push your hips forward. And then rolling your hand back, so you're now in this kind of like tree plank. Step it back, lower down. Hands nice and wide for this guy. So the same leg you just did, you're going to come up, little cobra with wide hands, and then roll down, chest to the ground, lift that leg up. And we're going to do that 5 times. So really squeezing your shoulder blades together to emphasize the arch in your upper back as you roll down, letting the heel lift. Place it down. So we're doing 5. This is 3 for me. Trying to straighten your leg as best you can. And then stretch it back, sitting on your heels, round it all out. So it's always nice to round out your back after doing that kind of lifting. Even though your butt and hamstring are doing the most of the lifting, your low back is still definitely taking some of it. So it's nice to put it in its inverse position. Okay, coming back up, I'm just going to turn around so you can still see me in my side plank. That's totally up to you. So setting yourself in that plank position. Fingers forward, elbow crease forward, lean over into that one side. You can always be on your elbow. Stretch your other guy up. Top of the foot to the ground, so I'm turning my foot out. I'm dragging it up and down, like I'm in a really narrow hallway. Up and down. Continually trying to push your hips forward, pull your knee back. 5, we're doing 8, 3, and then holding, hips forward, knee back. Use that, feel that side butt, And then unwinding back to your plank, trying to hold that kind of tree shape. And then lowering down, you can step your foot back, feet nice and, or hands nice and wide. Coming up, cobra, squeezing your shoulder blades together, so really forcing chest open to lift your leg. And we're doing 5. Lifting that leg, really squeezing it straight back behind you. And then sitting back on your heels, maybe spreading your knees a little wider to round out your low back. Awesome. All right, grab a drink of water if you need one. Yeah, so by like moving through those positions, like side plank to forward or to regular plank with your leg, you're starting to like train yourself to do different movements with your different limbs, which we do in the air all the time and definitely take for granted. It is way harder than we give ourselves credit for. It's just a little reminder for ourselves. Can you guys hear the horn? It's like really, really loud for me, and I want to make sure that it's like not too bad for you guys. It's okay? Great. This is what people think our lives are all the time. It is not this. Doing like exercise and playing a horn, it's not always the case. Okay, let's do some leg stuff. So if you have any yoga blocks, you can grab them. I realize mine's ready for them. Cute. Okay, so we're gonna start with some tippy birds because we haven't done them in a bit, and all of this like leg lifting kind of warmed your hamstring and glute up to it. Yeah. So if you want like a little stability challenge, so you can do this like just feet on the ground. That's totally cool. If you find that you often are like rounding to reach the ground, just put a yoga block in front of you on some height so you don't have to reach quite as far. If you have really long legs, that also might be a thing because when you tip, you're like, oh, I'm so far away from the ground. So you can give yourself a little something to aim for. And if you want a little bit of a stability challenge, you can stand on the block. It's going to look like I really know what I'm doing because these blocks are so like solid that it's like you're not standing on anything at all. But don't you worry, if it was a foam block, I would be wobbling. So we're going to do the version. We're going to go this forward to get a little lift. Hips are super square. Knee is pointing straight down. And I'm leaning forward and back down. So the line from your shoulders to your knee always stays the same. So you're not closing or opening. There's nothing weird going on. So this line stays the same. You're just bending at your knee and hinging at your hip. So we're gonna do 10 on each side. I'll start giving some things to go. So if you know that there's a worse side, maybe start on that one. You'll hear that a few times over the course of all of this. So really grounding into that bottom foot, hips nice and square, lift your knee, and then passing forward, straightening that leg, hips are super square, root down into your big toe. Back up. One of the nice advantages of doing it on the block is that you can just pass the ground and go straight leg. Keeping your ribs pulled in, feeling that slight kegel, and making sure your toes are pointing straight down to the floor. Slight tail tuck, ribs pulled in, hips are super square. Trying to root down into all 4 edges of your foot to combat any wobbling that's happening. And if coming up to a straight leg is not feeling good, you can come to that bent knee and then just pass through to straight leg in the back. And feel free to play around with your shapes. Not everyone needs to be the same. The thing that needs to stay the same is your hips staying really square and that line from knee to shoulder staying nice and straight and contained. So I'm at 8, so if you haven't been counting, that's cool. You can do 2 more with me. Really standing tall, rooting down into those 4 edges of your foot to be tall. Resisting the urge to let that back foot turn out at all. Ooh, falling over. It's finally happening. Now on this one, now that your leg's nice and tired, see if you can reach forward to grab that front foot. And then stretch it as far forward as you can, staying rooted in that bottom foot, maybe twisting to the side. Stretch up through the top of your head. Yeah, and then bring it back in control. Step down to the ground and forward fold to shake out your legs. Asiatic. Awesome. So you can just, I always kind of like tuck my toes under and shake out my leg because my calf gets really tired and my feet are not as good as my hands for standing on sometimes. And then we'll do the other side. So yeah, once you get the rhythm, feel free to like express through that leg. Do whatever you want. It's the rooting down and square hips that really matters. So, nice square hips. Folding forward, keeping your ribs in. That's going to help keep that line going to that straight horizontal line. Keep your toes and knee pointing straight down so that hip is staying heavy. Kicking ground, great. And yeah, you can have your hands out for balance or your hands on your hips to help remind them to stay nice and square. Reach back through your foot, forward through your head, keeping those hips really level. Keeping the ribs pulled in, and that slight Kegel thought will also help keep your hips under control. So I have 2 more. Reach the top of your head, back through your head, the back through the ball of your foot. And then on this last one, maybe grabbing either your foot or your calf, whatever you feel good grabbing, stretching that foot forward and trying to twist away. And then step it down, come off your block if you're up on one, and give yourself a forward fold, have a little leg shakeroo. Excellent. Okay, so that was your whole back leg. Now we'll do some side hip. So this is the one that I definitely need a little height for. And if you feel really unstable, just hold on to something higher, like a chair or a couch or anything. Or even, you could even go against the wall. Actually, that might be a fun challenge if any of you are trying to do some leg shifts in a handstand, because then your upper body is like a handstand, and we're going to be moving one leg at a time. So if you've been doing these a bit, and you want something a bit different, that's like a fun challenge. And if you're still a little bit unsure of how to activate, don't worry too much about it, just give yourself a little height. So, hands are going to be about shoulder width apart. Whether you're on the wall or on something down low, push it away, tuck your tail, and then we're lifting that leg straight out to the side. Actually, sorry, another thing that you can kind of do if you wanted is have your butt to the wall, because then you're going to be really aware of what's shifting around. So it'll give you lots of information. So whatever position you choose to be in, I'm going to do mine butt to the wall for today. We're going to do 10 to each side. So reaching forward through the top of your head, root into one foot, and then you're lifting straight to the side and down. There's no rotation in your hip. Your knee and your toes are pointing straight forward. And then as you kind of get the feel of it, see if you can press down into your hands, and that will give you a little bit more lift. Because then you're getting your side, like your obliques, in on the party as well. I have 3 more. So if you're not sure if you're counting, that's totally fine. Making sure that the foot that you're standing on, that hip is staying pretty well centered over your foot. You don't get to lean away from it too much. After your 10, if kind of wherever you are, either against the wall or not, you can squat down, give your legs a little break. And then we'll do the other side. So being against the wall just really gives me some information about if I tend to pull my leg forward or kick it back, which is just a good thing to know. So rooting down through your feet, pushing down through your hands, stretch forward through your head, shift your weight onto the other foot, and then we're lifting the leg up and down. Trying to keep some weight on the inside edge of that standing foot. That's going to help you keep your hip centered over your ankle. Oop, looking around too much. Yeah. As you get to the top of that lift, see if you can reach back through your tailbone, forward through your head, push down through your arms, so you get a little bit of extra tension in your body and a little more access to things. Pushing down, especially through the hand of the foot that's raising. Awesome. And I have one more. And then you can sit down in your squat to give your butt a little break. Deadly. So the more control you have in kind of moving your legs in these kinds of positions, the easier it's going to be when you do like straddle handstand or things like anything like that. Okay, back to the back side. So we haven't done these ones in a little while. We're going to do the scorpion tail. So I'm trying to just like bounce back and forth between like side butt and back butt to keep them nice and even. But we're going to take a block or anything, like a tissue box even. It's going to go from your heel to your butt. This is also going to bring your knee hang muscles back on the go. So from our tabletop, spiraling your elbow creases forward, push down, and we're lifting that leg straight up and down. So it may take you a moment to place your block. It's kind of like on the top of my Achilles and then to the bottom, the top of my hamstring, the bottom of my butt. And you're lifting straight up and down. Just like all the other things in this plane that we've done today, slight tail tuck so your Kegel, you can kind of engage Kegel-y. And then your hips stay nice and square. So you're only lifting your heel as high as you can with your hips staying square, so you don't get to open up or anything. We're going to do 10. So nice and slow, keep the pressure heel to block, and if it starts to slide, that's okay, just make any little adjustments. Yeah, so hips square, lift it up, and down. You can try to challenge your core a little bit more by pulling your knee past, and up. So you just have a slightly fuller range of movement. Either way, you're doing 10. Oh. I was like, yeah, I'm at 10, I made it. As soon as you have that thought, that's when you drop the things. So after your 10, just give yourself a moment in down dog to kind of stretch out your hamstring, give it a bit of love. Really sticking your tail out, coming up on your toes, and then sinking back. So, and even though it's like a bit fatigued from doing the lifting, doing this kind of lifting warms it up well to be stretched. So hopefully the leg you just did the lifts with feels a little bit more free in your down dog. Sweet. Okay, other side. So kind of between your Achilles and your glute, near the top of your hamstring. Spiraling your elbow creases forward, pushing the ground away, and then ribs in slightly up and down. So it's not a full tail tuck, like an exaggerated one, because that forces you into the rounded position. It's just a slight Kegel thought, because that's going to keep everything in your hips nice and stable. So hips are moving, they're nice and square to the ground. And I can tell which one my predominant knee hanging is, because this other one feels like it's never done anything like this before. So really pushing your heel into the block to keep it secure. We're doing 10. And if you want that extra core effort, you can pass your knee past the other one in and out. But the most important part is that your hips stay level to the ground and keep that pressure, heel to block. And when you're done your 10, you can step it down, take your block out, and then come back to that down dog to stretch out your hammies a little bit. Coming up onto your toes, sticking your tail out, so arching your low back, and then sinking back onto your heels. Awesome. Sweet. Hands to stride. Great. Okay, so I think that's enough of the leg lifting things because they do get tiring. So we're going to grab a band, a looped band, and do some, actually no, I don't want to use the band today because I want to do the full S movement from the clamshell because you'll hopefully have a little bit more freedom in your hips than sometimes. So, lie on your side. Hips are stacked directly over each other. Heels are in line with your hips. And we're going to do clamshell. So tucking your tail to press your hips forward again so they stay. So everything we've done so far, your hips have stayed this nice level position. And then we're lifting your knee. So we're going to start with 5 like this, nice and controlled. If you want that extra challenge, you can kind of have a little bit of space floating between your toes. But your hips are staying stacked and you're using your side butt to lift your leg. On the 5th one, we're going to hold. So tucking your tail, push that top hip forward a little bit more. And now we're going to go external rotation. So your knee stays put and you're lifting your heel up and down. Yeah, and see if you can challenge yourself a little bit. Get to the top and then see if you can eke a little bit extra, maybe an extra inch or so out of it. Just by that attention of using your rotators. Now pausing here with your heel up, you're going to go knee to the ground and then switch knee up, heel down. So you're making these kind of like S's with your knee. Yeah, whatever, if you putting your hand on the ground gives you a bit more stability, cool. And then now that you kind of have the movement, see if you can get a little bit more rotation. So your knee is, your foreleg, your calf, is as perpendicular to the ground as possible. Up and down. Awesome. One more. And then you can stretch it out, lie on your back, pull your knee in towards your chest. And you can kind of push it across your body over to the side. Sweet. And then we'll do the other side. Yeah. So hips stacked directly on top of each other. You can put your hand there for some balance. And then keeping that hip right where it is, tuck your tail to lift your knee. So with each one, you're slightly pushing your hip forward and down. And down to really get that side butt working. On your 5th one, you'll stay up and then moving with your heel. So try to keep your knee where it is to lift your heel Maybe pausing at the top, trying to eke out an extra centimeter. Awesome. And then pausing with your foot at the top, drop your knee down, heel up, and switch. Yeah, so trying to get your toe pointing down, your knee pointing up as best you can, so you're getting as much motion in that knee as possible. And I'll do one more. Nice. And then to stretch it out, just lie on your back, pulling your knee in towards your chest. Try to relax through your sacrum, so it's nice and heavy, and then stretch that knee across your body. Excellent. Okay. So with just to kind of give your hips a little break, and while they're all kind of loosey-goosey, give you one quick active stretch. So you can grab your loop band and put it kind of around your calves. Just because if you put it right around your ankles, since they're so much smaller than your calves and closer together, I feel like I never get as much push out as I want. So if your hamstrings are really tight, what you can do is like come up onto a block, so you're going downhill a little bit. It's always an option. Or even, and if the block feels like too much, if you just like roll your yoga mat up a little bit so you're a little bit supported, that's also useful. So you're going to just notice for a second, kind of now that you've worked on both of your hips, do they both kind of naturally turn out the same amount? Maybe not. So in this kind of like resting position, my left leg is like really happy to turn out and just be there, whereas my right leg is like pretty well up and down. So noticing that kind of thing in these like kind of postures in the middle of it all will tell you a lot about why one side might have felt more difficult in the actual exercise. So it's always fun to notice it in the middle. Okay, so you're gonna flex your feet and push out into the band so that your ankles are at hip width apart. I'm rooting down into my sit bones, stretching up tall, and keeping my toes straight up. So it's not just a turn out and push, it's a real like push with your whole leg out. You're gonna keep that pressure and then fold forward into your pike. So we're gonna stay here for 5 breaths with each inhale, flattening your back, reaching back through your tailbone and re-pushing out into the bands. And then with each exhale, releasing down into that a little bit more. So inhale, adjust, flatten your back, push your legs out into the band. Exhale, relax into it, keeping your back as flat as possible. Inhale, adjust. Fold forward. Inhale, adjust for the last one. Fold forward. And then you can relax everything forward into a fold. Awesome. Yeah. So I always like doing that one kind of after some clamshells because everything's just a little bit more activated, so I just feel like I have a bit more control. So it's nice to do a stretch in the middle of all the conditioning. Okay, so let's do our quick core circuit, just so we get that in, and then we'll go back to some kind of like active flexibility stuff and kind of work with that. Okay, so as per usual, we're going to start with dead bugs because they're the best. Any variations that you're really digging, go for it. And if you want that extra little bit of control over where your like open hip line is, giving yourself a little bit of extra height under your low back. So even I'm just going to roll my yoga mat up so that it's under my low back, kind of supporting my sacrum. because that's gonna just force you to really know where that straight line is without just being able to be like, yep, the ground's there, that means I'm in this position. So thinking tail tuck to press your low back into that little support you've given yourself. Fingertips on your legs. If you want a little bit of an extra challenge, this block is keeper Gredinix is too heavy. You can put the block there because then you have to keep everything stable as you move your leg. That's totally optional. But the most important part is the tail tuck to keep your low core connected and stop your hips from doing any weird clicking. Okay, getting my timer on the go. No, not 20 minutes, 1 minute. And go. The knees directly over your hips, reaching out. And you can alternate side to side. And since it's lower body, we've done all kinds of hip activation. Just noticing if your leg naturally turns out when you extend it out, or if you can keep it parallel, so you're in parallel, so your knee is pointing directly towards the ceiling. Tucking your tail, push your low back into the ground. You must be almost there. Yeah, 10 more seconds. And you're done. So you can flip over, you can roll your mat back out, and stretch your stomach out for a moment. Excellent. Okay. So now that your low core is all turned on, this might be a cruel one for the minute, so we might take a little break in the middle, but we're going to go backward to set the position. So all that is like a little train shimmy forward. So it's not necessary. I just find that kind of lets me scoop my leg in underneath me so I can stretch up nice and tall and relax through my hip flexors. And we're going to do leg, leg. So we're just alternating leg lifts. It's definitely a tough one for a minute, so if you want to take a little break, go for it. And I'll do it with a full minute as well, so that I can tell you when I need to take a break. Awesome. So your goal is to sit as tall as possible, like a nice flat back, relaxing through your hip flexors. The farther forward you go, the harder it's going to be, but what you don't want to do is round, because then you're just going to use your hip flexors. So if you feel like you can't even, if that feels like it's going to be difficult right off the bat, give yourself a little height, so sitting on the block or even just rolling up your yoga mat, because then you can really feel your core and your quads working together and not your hip flexors. So a little bit of extra height if you know that those like to take over. So setting your position, tuck your legs back in and under, root down through your sit bones, up through the top of your head, relax through your hip flexors, and we'll go. There's one leg, nice and slow, nice straight legs. Rooting down through your sit bones, so I'm tipping my tail out as I try to lift my leg a little bit. They're definitely super fun. So if you've lost it at all, take a moment to readjust. So we're at 30 seconds. Stretch to the top of your head, reach back through your sit bones, lifting those legs. Super straight legs. Getting rid of any bending, pointing through your feet. That helps you kind of engage everything through your legs, so everything's helping a bit more. We only have 10 more seconds. Root through those sit bones, stretch up through the top of your head. And you're done. Yay! So take a moment to stretch out your quads, so just bending your knee, heel back behind you. Making sure to do both sides. Like it's so much worse at everything today. That time. Okay, next one we're gonna do is our boat twists, but we're gonna do it with a block between your knees. So we're gonna stick it between your knees, come up to boat, lower and up. Now I'm gonna squeeze my knees together, my heels apart, so you're really gonna feel your side hips that we've gotten all warmed up. And then twist, twist to the center, down, up, twist, twist. So trying to keep your knees squeezed together, your heels apart, so you really get your side butt going, and that stays really stable as you move your upper body. So move nice and slow, just try to be as in control of it as possible. Okay, and go. So starting in that boat, knees together, heels apart, we'll go twist, twist, through the center, down, and up. If that part gets too tangly, just do the twist, twist, pause in the center, knees together, heels apart. This part's optional. Knees together, heels apart, twist, twist, to the center, out. You're halfway there. Knees together, heels apart. So you're really getting that low body engagement through a real core exercise. Knees together, heels apart. Twist, twist, rooting down through your sit bones. Twist, open, 5 more seconds. Knees together, heels apart. And you're done. Ta-da. Take a moment to stretch out your core muscles. Whew. All right, now we'll give you a slightly chiller one that's at least gonna stretch all that out. So we're going from your back, tucking your tail, and these rock backs. So trying not to swing your legs too much, but they're gonna stay straight. Curl your tailbone to peel each vertebrae up and down. Okay, we're starting now. So really try to feel this motion all coming from your pelvis. If your hamstrings are tired, you can have a little bend in them, or if they're tight, sorry. And if you can think of it, nice straight legs, pointed feet. There we go. 15 seconds left. Compressing on your way back down. So really trying to let your legs be heavy and press your vertebrae back in. And in. Amazing. All right. That's our core circuit for the day. It was a short and sweet one so we can get a nice stretch in. So if you want to get a drink, go for it. Cool. So if you have a place on the wall, we're going to go to the wall to do our kind of quad and hip flexor stretch, which should be particularly nice after those little leg lifts. And by nice, I mean exciting. So if you have a spot on the wall, just like pull your set up there. And if you have blocks, we're going to use those as well. And if you don't have blocks, that's totally cool. You can just keep thinking the intention of the kind of squeeze. So I'll move you guys over here a little. There we go. Sweet. So you're gonna bring one block, place it on the ground. I will continue saying this for the rest of time. If you have a worse leg, start with that one. You will have something to look forward to. So to start, we're not going to use the second block. That'll be kind of optional afterwards. So when your knee is super close to the wall, that's the maximum line you can go to. If it's a little bit farther away, you can have a bit more control. So your knee doesn't need to be right next to the wall. You can kind of experiment. That's going to force it in the full bend right away though. So if you're unsure, just have it a couple of inches away from the wall. So you're going to walk your front foot out to the side a little bit so that your hips can stay square and you're not like falling over. And your back heel is going to aim for the outside of your hip. You don't want it on the inside of the hip because then it's going to be really easy to just turn a lot. So heel is tending towards the outside of your hip. That other leg, really don't worry too much about it, it's just supporting you. So you're going to tuck your tail, stretch up to the top of your head. So you're going to get a pretty intense quad stretch. So rooting down through that bottom knee, tucking your tail, stretching to the top of your head. Now with the same arm as that back leg, you're going to reach it up towards the ceiling, pulling your ribs in, and then stretch over the top, whoop, without falling over. So it happens when I try to change my gaze as I'm going. So I'm still stretching up nice and tall. I'm just doing a little bit of a side bend to kind of shift the stretch a little bit. And then back. Cool. Now you're going to bring your hands to your front knee. Really tuck your tail. So you're going to keep all this like ribs pulled in, tail tucked under, and then press your hips forward. So put your hands wherever you need to have some balance. If you want to have blocks next to you, that's kosher. So tucking your tail and pushing your hip forward. If you're comfortable here, try to push your back foot into the wall a little bit more to tuck your tail and sink a little bit deeper. We're going to take 5 deep breaths here. With each inhale, resetting your position, so tucking your tail, stretching up tall. With each exhale, release a little bit deeper into it. If you can keep the control, like a slight glute squeeze, tucking your tail, pushing your hip forward, you can try to reach back towards the wall or towards your leg or something to make it into a bit of a back bendy stretch. So once this is all set, you can play around with your upper body, but you want to make sure that this is set and comfy. So to come out, do it slowly. You can lean forward and really slowly just shift your hips back. And then we'll do your other side. Yeah. So by doing the slight tail tuck, that makes sure that everything that you just activated is like super engaged and working, and then you can sink deeper into it. All right, other side. So again, you can put your knee all the way against the wall, or you can have a little bit of space there. It's totally what you're comfortable with. Yeah. So taking that moment, stretch out nice and tall. So you're not worried about the hip flexor stretch right away. It's just your quad to start. And then slight tail tuck. Keeping your ribs pulled in, stretching tall through the top of your head. So you're just stretching out your quad a little bit. If you want to add a little extra side stretch, the same arm as back leg, reach it up towards the ceiling. keeping your ribs pulled in, your tail tucked. So even just that kind of changes the stretch a little bit. And if you like, you can reach over the top slightly, making sure that your front hip is continually pulling back and your tail is tucking. Excellent. And then unwind. Now you're gonna bring your hands to your leg maybe, or grab onto whatever you can. Tuck your tail and shift your way forward. Continually tucking your tail and letting it sink down. So we'll do 5 breaths here. Same thing. With each inhale, tuck your tail, push down into your knees, stretch up through the top of your head so you're nice and engaged. And then on your exhale, let yourself sink a little bit lower. Pulling that front hip back slightly, that's going to encourage your low core to do the work. So the same kind of that plus the tail tuck keeps you really protected. And if you're feeling really good and balanced, push your foot into the wall, tuck your tail, and maybe reach your hands up or behind you into some kind of back bendy thing. But keep tucking your tail, pushing your knee into the ground, pulling that front hip back. And after your 5th breath, you can come forward and out really slowly. And then you can just kind of sit on your heels for a second to give your legs a little break. Yeah. So you want to do all of that, like the engagement, stretching tall, tucking, using your core. Because if you just do a lunge and you push forward and you have this like banana back, and none of this kind of engaged, what will happen over time is that your femur bone, where it attaches into your hip, is going to push, the head of the bone is going to push forward to all those little ligaments and muscles and all that hip flexor area. So if you feel like you have a lot of pain kind of here and in the fronts of your hip flexors, and if they're aggravated, that's also, they're going to be more likely to click and stuff because they don't really know how to protect themselves from around. So doing all this hip clicking, like low core work, coupled with all the engagement as you stretch it out, is going to make that that joint sit in its socket much happier. Because it's so tempting when you do all this like hip flexor, like you're lifting your legs and you're getting the cramps and you're like, okay, I have to stretch it out. But without the engagement, the top of your fingers just like, it's literally punching the part that just got aggravated with all that clicking. So it's making it worse. And you're like, oh, but the pain is good. So that's why it's really important to do both that low core connection and the kind of supported stretching so that your hips get stronger in action and in stretch. I say this as someone who did exactly that and was like, I have to stretch my hip flexors so much and made them so much worse because I wasn't supporting myself at all while I was doing it. So it was not a good time. So do not recommend. Which is why we're doing this Lark. It's great. Okay, so that's obviously the back part of your split and the hip part of any back bending. So now we're going to do the hamstring stretching, which we've already done a little bit of, and there's lots of ways to do it. So we're going to start with some nerve glides. So the version that I want you to do today is the slightly supported version. So you can roll up your mat or a sweatshirt or really anything. And that's going to go under your low back. So that your tailbone can be on the ground and your back can be on the ground. It should be down a little bit so you can really see. There we go. So everything that we just did, all the tail tucking to push your low back on the ground, you don't need to do right now. Which I know, silly after that whole speech about hip flexors. But here we are. So sacrum is pushing to the ground. So it's going to be an active version, so you can just link your hands together, press them against your knee. Your foot starts pointed, straighten, flex at the top, pull it in. Point at the bottom, straighten, flex at the top, pull it in. So once you have that action going, you can think about the compression a little bit more. So with each one being heavy through your tailbone, so you're really pushing your tailbone into the ground, pushing your knee into your hand, and then as you're bending it back in, pulling your knee into your chest. Straighten, flex, pull it in. Letting your tailbone be heavy. So you have a slight arch in your low back. That just gets a little deeper into your hamstrings. And we'll do 3 or 4 more. So by doing this kind of supported version of it, you're just forcing all those little stabilizers in your hips to work a little bit harder to like anchor you down. So they're going to be all turned on and ready to go to do a really supported split. So after you're done that one side, then we'll do the other. And you can always take your first couple just to kind of get the action. And then when you're ready, start thinking about sticking your butt out so your tailbone's pushing into the ground and pushing your knee into your hands a little bit more. And we'll do 1 or 2 more. So that we did about 10 on each side. So, and then you can take the thing out from under your back and just pull your knees into your chest and give them a little roll side to side. Excellent. So the last thing we're going to do before we kind of do a split is we're going to do our still can't remember which ones are tendus and which ones are fondus. But anyways, I think these are tendus. So with your, push the water glass out of the way before disaster ensues. So starting with your not so good leg, since we're doing splits, like regular splits, we'll just do it in parallel. So you're going to drag your toe up your leg, knee to chest, and then straighten and lower. So we're going to do 8 of these, trying to keep your tail slightly tucked, your ribs pulled in, so your core is engaged to pull your leg in, and then control it all the way down. So with each one, trying to get your leg closer to your face. Pull it in, lower down. 3 more. And lower. And you can put your fingers kind of on your hip flexor to encourage it to relax. So you're using your quad and your core to pull that leg in closer instead of your hip flexors taking over. Which you've done a lot of work to encourage them to relax today. So they're probably not super keen to take over, but fingers on top of them will always help. Straighten and down. And then we'll do the other side. So knee in, straighten, and lower. Keeping that low back pressed into the ground, your ribs pulled in so your core is super engaged. And lower. Relaxing through your hip flexors. And we'll do 2 more. That. Okay, so little activation. Hip flexors are all nice and warm, so we're ready for some splits. So if you have some blocks, maybe grab them so that you can boost your hands up a bit. because that's going to allow you to keep this good body position in your split instead of like having to reach for the ground and be all hunched over. Tip your hands back. So you can kind of ease your way into it. Again, if you have a worse leg, do it first. You will thank yourself. So you can stretch out your front leg a little bit if you want to, just flexing your foot, kind of turning it in and out of its socket, moving back and forth. And then when you're ready, sliding out towards your split. So if you're trying to challenge yourself and know that you're good at fighting yourself, if you put your heel on something that slides as opposed to your yoga mat, you won't be able to fight yourself so much by like clenching, because then any activating you're going to do to stop yourself from sliding around is going to square you up, and then you can relax into it a little bit more. So I'm just going to move myself over so that I can do that so you can see what I mean and I don't kick everything. And you guys are all kind of starting at different times, which is cool. Hold it for 30 seconds or 10 full breaths. So I'm just going to put my sweatshirt there so that I can stick my heel on it, because then I can just slide into my split. Whether or not I'm using my blocks, I'm going to try to get my shoulders over my hips, square them up a bit, so I'm squeezing my front leg nice and straight, I'm squeezing my back glute, and letting myself lower down. So with each inhale, trying to pull your front foot back slightly so your hips are square, and then with each exhale, relaxing into it. So if you're leaning forward, don't worry too much, but see if you can slowly ease your way back so that your shoulders are stacked over your hips. Squeezing both of your legs and breathing. Squeeze that front leg, trying to push the back of your knee down, all looking good. And then after your 10 breaths, you can just sit on your butt to pull your leg out. And I always like just like doing a little sit on my hips to stretch it out. Meg Wag calls this the bum dance, which I find hilarious. Okay, and now you have your good leg to look forward to. Another thing you can do, especially on your stronger leg, if you don't have like a slidey thing, if you have a foam roller, it's really good to kind of put your ankle up on it, because then you can make, since it rolls, you can make all those little adjustments and they're super active. And it's a little bit of a height, so you're working towards an oversplit, which is everyone's idea of fun, right? Okay, so prep yourself for your second leg. If you wanna like do any kind of pre-stretches, you're pretty warmed up, but we all have things that we need. So flexing the foot, turning your leg around in its socket. And then when you're ready, sliding on out. So I'm just getting my foot on my sweatshirt. Yeah. Lift yourself up to tuck your back leg under so your back pinky toe can touch the ground, because then your hips are nice and square. Straight front leg and then lower down. So with each inhale, you're squaring your hips, so pulling your front leg back, your back hip forward, and then sinking down. So you're never truly just relaxing, you're always making little adjustments, squaring up your hips, straightening your leg, and then sinking down into it. Make sure you're breathing. And yeah, if you're nice and comfy here, maybe seeing if you can walk your hands back slightly and stretch up through the top of your head, squaring yourself off. So both of your legs are squeezed, you're pushing down on the floor gently, distracting yourself in whatever way you can, and then taking 2 more nice full breaths in this split. Nice. They're looking so good. Sick. And then after your 2 breaths, you can just lean to one side to get your legs out of it, and then sit on your heels and just let your hips kind of go back together. Awesome. Let's see what time it is. Perfect timing. So, if you have like some real flexibility goals, a second round of splits will be very beneficial to you. Maybe on a slight, even if you don't feel like you're flat to the ground, giving yourself a very slight height will kind of start encouraging you to believe that someday you can do an oversplit. So if you're gung ho on your splits, do another round now. Just because the second round's always good. And if you want, I'm just like looking for a wall, like I can do this without kicking anything on. A fun kind of split exercise is doing your split up the wall. So I'm gonna learn my lesson and put a sock on because I can't leave nail polish on one more set of walls. So put the sock on the leg that's going up the wall, and then you can just stand. The farther away from the wall you are, the less of a split it's going to be. So you can start maybe like 2 feet away from the wall, stretch it up, and then you can lean towards your split. So it's nice because it kind of, you have to be square because you can really see what your legs are doing, and you're kind of working towards upside down. So yeah, go about a foot or two away from the wall, and then see if you can reach your toe towards the ceiling. So I'm pushing the floor away forward and reaching my top foot up. And just like on the floor, every inhale makes a little adjustment, exhale goes towards a split. And then you can slide it down, give yourself a little break, and then do your other side. Nice. Yeah, there you go. So it's gonna force you to be in a nice square split because you have to control your leg up there. And that's gonna be the kind of split that's gonna turn into like foot to head or needle scale or any of these things. So it's kind of just putting you in a slightly different position so you can stretch it a bit differently. And it's just fun to change things up.